Jumping back into the Brand to Fan show, I am joined by a good friend of mine. He is an entrepreneur. He's the head of his own creative agency, and he just became a father to little Bianca. Vincenzo Landino is known as the F1 guy, and in his newsletter, The Qualifier, Vin explores the world of Formula One through a business, content, and media lens. And I'm so excited to talk to you, Vincenzo. Thanks for joining me on the Brand to Fan show.
Thanks for having me. I have to say, that was the first time that I've been on a show since being a dad. And I think that one is what brought a smile to my face most, was being like, I'm a dad. That's the title that gets me most excited now.
That's awesome. You know, my first podcast was actually Mom Buns, where me and my best friend from college, would steal time away from, nap time or whatever. And we usually recorded with mom bun up and here's a 20-minute podcast, because moms don't have more time than that. So I think that, it's worth celebrating and worth acknowledging. That
it really is. Kudos to moms though, really. I mean, I see my wife right now and it's just like, you are a superhero. So shout out to the moms, because moms are the ones really doing it.
Okay. Well, you've just, if I wasn't already a fan of you, now I definitely certainly am. Vin, I want to kind of start from, we've known each other for a little while, but I didn't know you growing up, college, etc.
Yeah.
You are somebody who is a big personality with a really big heart. So I'm curious, what do you remember first really wanting to do when you grew up?
I do always remember, firefighting was something I always was interested in. I just it wasn't glorious, but it was something, at least in my town, right? So it was a volunteer fire department. So I would, I always thought it was the coolest thing that these guys got to volunteer. They weren't actually, I don't think I fully realized that they also had to work, but I was like, oh wow, they're doing it because they really love their town. That's so cool. And they love the people. So that was one thing I remember vividly, thinking was an awesome idea. Never did it, but I always thought if I ever moved back into my hometown, I would definitely go back and volunteer to be a firefighter in town, because I don't know, helping, being there, when people need help the most, that's pretty cool, right? And those guys were always, they would come from anywhere, wherever they were, they would drop everything and show up. And I still find it very fascinating that people would volunteer for that. And I am very much you did say, I'm giving, and I do. I love to give of my time, of resource, anything I can to help, anyone and everyone. Sometimes too much. I rarely say no to anything, and so that's probably something I'd still go back and do now that we're talking about it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, I ask because I have this thesis that affinity is built on emotional connection, and I feel like as I've been thinking about the things that I wanted to do when I grew up, and then how that's kind of influenced the paths that I've taken or the choices I've pursued, getting back to something where I think you and I are a lot alike. We don't really fit in a box. We've worked for other people, but we tend to rely on some entrepreneurial pursuits and things. So I guess I'm just curious of your emotional connections to the world, even as a small child.
Yeah. Speaking of if we go down the entrepreneurship route, when this is post-college, but one thing I did in the town that I was living in, which was kind of adjacent to the town I grew up in, it was a bigger town, right? So they had a main street, and they had businesses around a central area. And one thing I always wanted to do was, especially growing up, and I see this as a blessing, but I was blessed to grow up with an immigrant mentality, right? Both my parents, immigrants, families immigrated over here. And so I got to grow up and then actually own their own. I have a lot of family members that own their own businesses, including my father. And a lot of my really close uncles, they own their own businesses. And I always was like, wow, you came here with nothing, literally not even knowing the language. And you went and started a business, became successful, raised a family, yada, yada, yada. And I always thought that was such not so much just entrepreneurship, but having this immigrant mindset, which now now is becoming a thing. And I was like, man, I wish I had talked about it. I mean, I'm talking probably 15 years ago when I started. I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't, social media was just coming around. It wasn't a thing where you like talked about that, right? And I actually started what would now be a co-working space, what we would look at as like a co-working space. And it was, I had actually developed not only the co-working space, but it was specifically designed for high school aged kids to come and help and like work with it. It was almost like a curriculum and develop, whether they had ideas or they just wanted to talk about business and entrepreneur. Like I found that fascinating, right? And just impart on them things that I didn't, or that I was able to get, but most people don't. And we were tied into the entire school system. I ended up working with like the local superintendent and the Economic Development Commission and a few other like local politicians and local business folks, the Main Street program, and like helping them understand how community works. I mean, this is all before, like we talk about community now, I'm talking about like online community manager, like your,
Right.
your social media. I'm talking about actual community people in person, and building up those types of things, and how a lot of the curriculum that I had helped put together was driven around community, local community, and how entrepreneurship didn't have to be this like big wild idea. It can be
Right.
something as small as, I say as small as, but it can be something as small as I want to have a coffee shop with some sort of mission and I want to serve my local community. And like, because there was people that were like, I don't want to go to college. Like, what do I do? At that time, people started seeing like, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to go to school. I can like do my own thing, or I could take a gap year and then go to school, or I could take a few years off. And if I want to go get an education, I can go back to it, but I can go to explore these ideas I have. So anyway, I had developed this whole program, this actual physical location and whatnot. And that was, I mean, I put like my heart and soul into that. And when I had to walk away, it was sucked. But I just,
Mhm.
I just didn't have the time and capacity to do exactly how I wanted to do it. And luckily we had some great people involved. And it's still there. Every time I go back, every time I'm in town, I always go back. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like this is this thing that I started. It's like still going, still serving, serving the youth, like the kids they're coming out of. There's 2 high schools in that town. So like that's really cool. And actually there's one young woman who had come to us while she was still in school, in high school. She had a whole business plan. I worked with her on the business plan. There was other folks that worked with her on their business plan. Come to find out, this is an awesome story. I saw her like 4 years later at a pitch competition in New York City in Harlem, and she ended up selling that business for I don't know the exact number, but a nice penny. And now she's working on like her second. She actually might be in her third business.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, that is so freaking cool. Like if that was the only person that ever got any ounce of benefit from this, like
Mhm.
that is so awesome. So yeah, so when you talk about community and things like an entrepreneurship, like I'm a huge proponent of both.
Yeah, you
And
just
working
absolutely light
together.
up. Yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
interesting. I didn't necessarily know that you also, I grew up in a really small town, like very small town.
Mhm.
And so a lot of that kind of mindset, I think there's something different that's
Oh
ingrained.
yeah.
And then you have that, like you said, the immigrant mindset. Does that impact like when you create a connection or you like see you build a dream and then you follow through on that, like you like your first thing, does that like how does that carry with you? Do you always feel like that responsibility on your shoulders as you go out and build other business?
Yeah, there's always a sense of like, wow, I shouldn't be here, or I might not belong here, or I uh, feel. But on the flip side, it's like I'm so blessed. There's like it's not negative talk, but it's almost like, wow, I literally like, what if my dad never? What if my parents never moved here? What if? So that's always something that you think about, but also how grateful and blessed you are. I feel like that any immigrant, family of immigrants, like they have that one up where it's like, wow, the opportunities that I have right now are so much more than the generation, like literally the generation before me and generations before me. And there's a sense of like, I want to make those folks proud, but also like, I'm going to do the things that they wanted to do, but they never had the chance to, had the opportunity to. So it's almost like think it, what is it? Dream it, think it, do it, whatever that saying is. So it's like, if you, I mean, and sometimes this is like my own downfall too, right? I have so many ideas that I try to jump on, like I said at the outset, where it's like, I don't have time to do everything, or I don't have time to follow through with every single idea. But it's because I've absorbed myself so much in that, like, I'm only given this one life to give to try these things out and do certain things. I want to do it all. So I would say I don't have as many inhibitions to starting things, but that's because I've taken it. I didn't have that right away, because when I did go to college, right? I went to college because it was going to make my immigrant family proud. Like, oh, here's the first Landino boy, that went to, like, so it had to grow. And now here it is, almost approaching 40 years old. And it's like, I've been able to adapt that mindset to where we are in the world, and with my own personality, and say, okay, this is how I'm going to make things happen, or I'm not going to make things happen, or I'm going to try things out, or I'm going to live my life. Right. So it's taken years of like adapting that mindset. Because it could be a hindrance to a lot of folks, right? I just have to do this to make my family proud. Well, that's also an immigrant mindset, right? But when you take it and you really understand certain aspects of why things were that way for certain individuals, and again, like my own parents, then you're like, oh, okay. They're worried because they couldn't do it. But when I can prove them wrong, or what, not wrong, but when I can prove them that, hey, it's possible, like, hey, this is the reason why you came here, then it's like, oh, okay, got it, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to do that, right? I had to do that when I started my own thing. And this is coming from, my own father has his own business. And I still had to prove, because it was like, are you sure? Like, are you going to be able to make money doing this? Can you actually make money like, people are going to pay you to go speak or go, talk about,
talk about something,
Twitter
make a
or
video.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, really, you're making videos, and we'll talk. I think there's a few things you want to touch on later, so I'll go into those. But it's like, yeah, that's the opportunity. That's why you were here, right? That's why you brought us here, is because of that opportunity. So I'm taking advantage of it. Yeah,
I get it. I'm kind of wondering where, did you grow up as a kid in Connecticut, like rooting for baseball teams in New York or football teams in New York, or were you influenced by kind of the family culture? And I know your family is Italian. I have Italian heritage too. So I remember growing up and it was like, we root for Italy, even though like, I can't tell you who's on the team. And like every 4 years they show up at World Cup. But man, if I saw that flag at the Olympics, like if it wasn't an American, I was rooting for the Italian in the Winter Olympics, that kind of thing. Did you have that same kind of influence?
Yeah. And this is not, this is going to sound really bad, but I never rooted for the US or anything. Not because I didn't like the US, I just didn't, right? I didn't speak English. It wasn't my first language. We grew up doing things that my grandparents had done in Italy when they, so it was like, I don't want to say it was like Italy, but it, that's how we grew up. Right. And so no, I grew, we, because we were, my father, I'll back up. Speaking of sports, my father, when he moved to the US in the 70s, which sounds so long ago, but I'm like, oh, it was not too much before I was born. I was like, that's always weird to me. But when he moved to the US, the Steelers were were winning Super Bowls. They were winning Super Bowls, and Franco Harris was on the team. Well, Franco Harris was Italian, was half Italian, half African American, and so my father was like, oh, who's this this Italian guy, right, hanging out with this other Italian American guy, Frank Sinatra. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. So we became Steelers fans.
Obviously.
And the Yankee, for me, it was the Yankees. My brother's a Red Sox fan, which is the strangest thing. But yeah, it was always Italy. We always were watching Italian soccer, Serie A. So big fan of that. Formula One. I watched that with my uncle growing up.
Mhm.
Again, that was a very European thing. I mean, yes, there's Americans that watch it, but that was still a very European thing. Still is. But yeah, like the flag means a lot. And when people are, well, like you said, I don't root for the US. It's not that I'm like actively saying like I want them to, like, even this last World Cup, Italy wasn't in it. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna root for the US. And I was like, wow, this is probably the first time I've ever like rooted for the US in something. And I was like, geez, I was like, I actually like shocked myself because I never actively thought about it.
So you're actively pro-European in the Ryder Cup is what you're saying.
Ryder Cup is interesting. Yeah. I actually don't care about who wins the Ryder Cup. I just want to watch good golf. And my brother and I actually want to go to Rome for the Ryder Cup this year.
You've taken like your own passions and the things that you love, right? The things that you're fans of, and you generate these ideas, and sometimes you're building new brands from that. In fact, as we read at the top of the show, like your bio literally reads the F1 guy. And now we understand like that's been part of you ever since. I get that. Golf has been part of me ever since I watched on the couch with my grandfather, right? And we cheered for Freddie Couples. So that's how that started for you? And then talk a little bit about how you became like I grew up watching F1, so like now you're the F1 guy on Twitter.
You want to really know how that started? I never actually said this aloud. That whole F1 guy thing on Twitter, there's all these, the marketing guy, the DTC guy, the sleep hacker guy, whatever. And I'm like, you know what? F it. I'm just going to say I'm the F1 guy. And I put it in the bio one day, and then people started like referring. It's funny because, and this is is fascinating to me. I did it. It was overnight. I didn't announce anything. I just put it in the bio. And all of a sudden, I'm getting people referring to me as the F1 guy. Ask me to be on podcasts. I'm getting, my profile views are up because I look at the analytics and I'm just like, really? Like, this is all it took was, and if there was ever evidence to me, not that there's been other things that have proved it to me, but if there was nothing else that proved to me that you truly can be whatever you want in the landscape, digital world, in the world that we're in right now, it was that. And not, again, I've seen it. I've seen other people do it. I've done it for clients. I've helped them do it, but I just never actually did it for myself in that way. Blown away, like shocking, right? To me, it's actually utterly shocking when I think of the fact that it was like a Saturday afternoon or whatever it was. And I just said, I'm going to change my bio and call myself the F1 guy. That was it. No one's ever questioned it. No one's ever said a word about like nothing.
They're not asking you to prove it. They're not asking you to like show up.
And
show up at races. Yeah.
And I'm blessed because I'm sure that if it was a woman that were to do that, they would get, oh, well, prove it. Who won the, I don't even know all those things. Like, I don't know everything, but no one's ever asked me either. So that's just fascinating.
I think that's interesting in that, like you made that comment about women. I remember when I got the job at the PGA Tour as the social media person, and like first one ever, this is like 2008, like 8 people are using Twitter, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, let's go do this. And we built social media channels on behalf of the PGA Tour, key tournaments, and things like that. And I remember being so conscious of not revealing anything about myself that would give away that I was a 20-something chick talking about professional golf and professional golfers on like in building the golf Twitter community. Like I was so conscious that none of that could slip. And I think it was a different time online where people, like, especially people who didn't really understand social, I would get talked to like, this is not about you. It's about the brand. Like, don't reveal, don't Don't be a person, be the logo, which is so not the way that we tell clients today how to do these things. But that's the kind of the era that I came up in. And I remember even meeting professional golfers. Like I met Stuart Sink, first golfer to 1 million Twitter followers. And I introduced myself as I'm at PGA Tour on Twitter. Now I'm 5'2"
awesome.
and Stuart Sink is like 6'5". So he looks down at me and like kind of like takes it in. That's not what I thought that you would say, you know? And I was like, okay, that's fair. But I think that kind of inauthenticity maybe strikes like somebody saying like, I am this on Twitter, I am this, you know, and declaring it allows people to, I say like, okay, yeah, like if you've declared it, I trust it in some way, shape or form. But I don't know that, especially then I wasn't there. And I kind of wonder like going forward, you know, it takes a little bit of brazen to do that. So,
right.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
go ahead. No, it was nothing.
Okay. So building personal brands like into companies or media, right? Like isn't super new for you. You and Amy used to be Schmidtauer, now Landino. Like you guys started to build Amy TV. It's been in this space for as long as anyone's been vlogging. What was like one of your or her original hypotheses like on using video and building a brand through vlogging? And has it been proved out?
So I'm not going to take credit for Amy TV in general because she was doing that for quite a few years before her and I met, but she did iterate. So at the time it wasn't Amy TV. It was actually Savvy Sexy Social.
All right.
And she was doing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday videos, helping businesses, for video in their own business. That was essentially what she was doing. And it was very niche. It was very, it only grew to a certain point, right? It was like just under 100,000, but she was making money. And I'm like, man, so there's, so when we met, it was like, okay, here's this Savvy Sexy Social girl. She's got a good sized channel for people I knew. I didn't know any big million subscriber people. I'm like 75,000. Like that's still a lot. It takes a lot of work. And understanding how she did it was intriguing to me because it was, again, like I said, it was super niche. It was not this. She wasn't doing tech. She wasn't doing some vlogging the way people talk about vlogging, like it's, with their gorilla pod and the camera in their face. It wasn't that. And I was like, yeah, but this isn't vlogging. So I would say the hypothesis that she explored and then we later developed into Aftermarket, the creative studio, was that vlogging itself was just misunderstood. And it doesn't matter whether you're holding the camera and skateboarding down New York City, like Casey Neistat, one of the premier vloggers in the space, right? Or whether you're sitting in your office with a backdrop and it's the same backdrop every time and you're delivering something to the camera, information to the camera. Like it doesn't matter. And people, including folks that work for brands, would kind of get caught up in that, like the nomenclature, like, oh, it's a vlog. Oh no, we don't vlog. Like, oh, that's a no-no, right? Because it was so, even people in the marketing space, social media marketing, like, oh, I'm not a vlogger. It's like, well, actually you are. You create video with a regular cadence. Are you, putting it out on whatever it is, YouTube, any channel, really, it doesn't matter. It doesn't even have to be just YouTube. You can vlog and just be a Twitter, put it out on Twitter. People are doing it on TikTok or Instagram stories, wherever you put it, you're vlogging, you're video blogging. Like literally that's what it is. People got away from what it actually meant and associated it with a style, which it's not. So we explored the fact that like, well, the same principles that work for blogging work for really any video content that you put out online. Now, there's obviously, we can go deeper into like specifics and whatnot, but for the sake of this conversation, whether you're a business or whether you are an individual personality, personal brand, whatever it is, there's always core tenets to video blogging. And you know, having a cadence. She has a whole formula that right now I probably haven't looked at long enough time to give you the whole formula, but there's a regular cadence, right? So there's some you want to pick, and this is true with anything, right? If you're a podcaster, you want to have a regular cadence. You don't want to just show up one day and then it's 7 weeks later before you post again. And I might post again tomorrow because I have another, like, your audience is going to be confused. Same thing if you have a blog or a newsletter. Like, there's a regular time frame that you're getting this content. So same thing with video. Video doesn't have to be scary. It just has to get done, right? Like, you don't need a big studio in front of you. We all have, well, I know my background's blurred out over here, but like, we all have this thing in our pocket. Like, this is, somebody asked me the other day, he wanted to shoot content for his webinar or whatever. And I was like, listen, you can go and buy a camera, not know how to use it. And then you do something with it once and never do it again. Or you can just shoot it with what you got in your pocket that has just as equal quality as what you're probably going to end up buying and spending money on. And you might actually go and use it again. That was another thing that we explored was, does equipment matter? Matters for certain people. If you're a tech YouTuber, yes, you have to have crispy, clear video. But if you are exploring your hometown, you know, you're a city, you're a travel person, like, I don't know, like, do you have to have the drone shots? And are you going to really want to go lug a 5-pound camera around Mykonos? Probably not, but you're going to have your phone in your pocket taking pictures or video. So there's such a balance. This works with B2B businesses too, and brands. Yes, they're probably going to want to opt for higher quality video, but we've seen it time and time again. Look at the companies that are crushing it over on, actually, AARP. Great example of a brand that's absolutely killing it on TikTok. Mm-hmm. The dude's just shooting stuff on his phone and he's playing along with trends. It's funny. It's engaging. He's just shooting with his phone. Yeah. Right. This is a brand. I don't want to say they're a huge brand, but they're a brand. Like, I've worked with clients like, actually, one of the, and you've probably, I don't know if you've actually worked with this company, but Bentley, they shot a video in 2015, maybe it is now, with an iPhone. They shot a commercial with an iPhone. Wow. Like, there's a whole behind the scenes stuff like that. It's like full on. Now it looks like, obviously they edited it and whatnot, but like, they did it with the iPhone. And I use that as an example all the time when people are like, oh, do I need to go buy this camera? And I was like, let me show you this video. And they're like, wow, that is incredible. I was like, yeah, that was shot with an iPhone 5, literally a 5S. And they're like, are you serious? I said, yeah. So if you got a 7 in your pocket and you think that you've got like nothing to create with, that was shot with an iPhone 5. Granted, they had all these, like, they had gimbals and all this stuff, but like, that's the reality of where we're at. And so pushing the button, actually starting, having a cadence, identifying your audience, all these principles are just like, nothing's any different. It ends up being, do you have the appetite to put yourself out there, whether you're a brand or whether you're whether you're a company or whether you're, your own personal brand, like yourself with this podcast, right? It's like, okay, am I going to actually push the button, record these, and then put them out for people to listen to? It doesn't matter if it's video, if it's a blog, if it's like my newsletter. I'm not a writer.
Well, I'm not 30,000 people would disagree, right?
Right. But I'm not a writer. I started writing and I kept doing it. I want to explore more editorial, right? But like, I'm not a writer. So what did I do? I just made it fit my style and I just keep doing it that way. Same thing with video. It's like, cool. You might not be an on-air personality. You don't have to be. Do it however you want. Talk to the camera however you want. You don't even have to put your damn face on the freaking video if you don't want to. You can like overlay it with stuff and do voiceover, right? There's so many options for what you can do. So, we've explored a lot of that. We brought that to clients and it always boils down to the same thing. It's no different than anything. It's just a core principle of marketing in general. We just have different ways to go about it now, whether it's audio, whether it's TikTok, whether it's a whatever it might be. And typically people get caught up in those things, the minutia, rather than what they're actually doing, which is just marketing, right? Or just talking about something they're passionate about. Like F1 for me, it just was something I always interested in cars and, motors, motorsport, like Formula One was always something I watched. Like, okay, I enjoy it. So why not talk about it? And you know what? If people don't like the way I talk about it and it sucks, I'll learn that soon enough too, right? But there's always going to be enough people that you can actually build something with. And that's that. We're coming full circle now. When Amy started her, the channel Savvy Sexy Social, before it turned into Amy TV and got a little bit bigger and became a little more like productivity focused, she made a living, a decent, actually a hell of a good living, by standards of most people, by focusing on that niche audience. And that was it. Never had to be like, oh man, I have 5 million. Oh, I don't have 5 million subscribers. You don't need 5 million subscribers. You don't have to be Mr. Beast to make money. Most people would, if you could tell someone, hey, you just have to publish a video every week about something you're really passionate about. You'll build an audience. You just have to keep serving that audience every week. You just have to keep showing up, coming back. And you could potentially make, $100K. I guarantee you most people would quit their jobs to do it for $100,000, right?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It goes back to kind of this, you're talking about how marketing, like I was just telling speakers yesterday, the marketing basics, like the fundamentals have not changed. Just where we distribute content, where we like execute is, but like eventually marketing to me does two things. We get someone's attention, we go viral potentially, or we just like help people fall in love with us. And I think what you're saying is, would you rather, I would be interested if you asked that same group of people, would you rather have something that went viral, right? 1 million downloads, et cetera, or would you rather make $100,000 from showing up every week? Well,
and this is what, go ahead.
Well, I think that's kind of there is a group of people that are like, you know what? I want to be the Chewbacca mask mom, right? I want one hit.
And that's fine.
And
what have you seen from Chewbacca mask mom since then? Nothing.
Zero.
Nothing. She had 15 minutes. Now, I don't know. I know she parlayed it into a few things right away and she got a lot of followers. Cool. But now maybe she did do something. I don't know. But the moral of the story there is that most people won't do anything. And I'll tell you, the problem with virality and going viral is that you have to one up I'm not a fan of Mr. Beast, and I'm okay with putting it out there. Like I respect what he does and who, I don't know him as a person. He seems very generous and whatnot. But here's the problem with him. And he has said this. He has to one up himself every video. Yeah. It has to be the biggest and baddest next video. So every time he does it, now granted, right now he's passionate about it. He's 24 years old and he's got the energy. He's full of piss and vinegar. He can do all that. And he's starting to get investors and cool. But let's just go back to that person who's working at their desk, who's miserable. Like, you're not going to go and do that and spend $1 million on a video, but you'll sure as hell talk to your phone, right? Mr. Beast has to go spend $1 million on a video because to produce the video, because the last video he spent $750,000 and the next one's going to have to be 1.5. He has to. That's the problem with virality, is that you have to continually one up yourself. Either you have to continually one up yourself, or you have to have a complete marketing plan behind you once you go viral to be to catch it all, to get everything from there, which most people are never gonna. You don't know you're gonna go viral. So yeah, I am not a big fan of virality. I'll tell you, my most, and when I say viral, they're not viral in my world, because virality is just, it's individual to every person, right? There's not one big viral. That's what I think. Viral moments that I've had have converted the worst. Like
Sure.
the biggest viral moments, Amy and I had a really good one on a podcast that we had. We clipped it out, and it was her calling Formula One European NASCAR. She made this comment, I responded, and it blew up on like, I mean, it got like 7 or 8 million views on TikTok. It was big, but I'll tell you, it was the least converting. So like, people didn't actually click on my profile. People didn't actually click on the link in my bio to go to, I got like no newsletter subscribers from it. Right.
Right. And if that's the metric, like that's the metric you're
let's
weighing
just say
that content against.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. But the videos that got like 2,000-3,000 views that I kept showing up and doing videos on, and I'm just using TikTok as an example, over time, they were driving traffic to the newsletter, to sign up. And I'm like, oh, over to my Twitter account. I'm just like, yeah, this just proves everything that I believed all along. It's like, yeah, that's cool. That's great. Like, yay, I went viral. But
yeah,
if it's not converting in what you need it to, whatever metric you've set forth for yourself, cool. Like
yeah.
2 thumbs up, it's fun.
But it also sounds like you had the infrastructure, right? To say, like, I'm going to show up and I might get a few thousand hits on a TikTok video, but I have a place to put those people. Like I have a way for them to get more connected, and I can build a small business around this part of it. And that most people won't, like, if people are just going for the attention or to do the one up, if they don't have that infrastructure, that's going to die out. So what is the way for someone who is committed to showing up, if they do get kind of that viral moment, like what's the thing that they need to take from that, or like maybe, or try to parlay it? Or is it just that's a nice to have, but it doesn't affect that I'm going to show up every Thursday for the next 20 weeks?
You can try to take advantage of it, right? And we've tested it too. Like, oh, this video went gangbusters. Let's do more like that. The problem is you have to ask yourself, it's not a problem. The question you have to ask yourself is, do I want to be known for what that one video is about, or that one thread? What if that's the only thread I go down? Now, for me, what I realized quickly was like, okay, that clip, I tried to double up on that clip, and I did a couple like funnier TikTok trends that like piggybacked off of that one. And people understood it because they saw that one. But the further I got away from that main video, the videos didn't really make as much sense as you went out. But also then it was like, oh man, I don't want to be the funny. I'm not trying to be a funny guy. I don't think I'm funny. I don't think I'm a comedian. Like, this is not what I want to do, right? I want to talk about business and culture in Formula One. I'm not trying to do these trendy things. Yes, this one video was funny. It was great. And when I stepped back, I was like, okay, I'm happy with just letting that video be the funny one thing that happened. Let me stick to the rest of my stuff. But most people don't know that. So they're like, oh, I'm going to go and do another funny one. And I'm going to do another funny one. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But then you cause yourself to go into that, like, just, I don't want to call it a rut. It's not a rut, but like now you're kind of carving out this one specific niche for yourself or area for yourself. And you have to continue to deliver, because the minute you go, not every meme account, but a lot of these meme accounts are very similar, right? They go and post some kind of meme thing, then you have to post another meme, well, yeah, now go and try and post something serious, or go and try to like sell that audience something and see if they buy it. Like, that's the ultimate test. Or forget about even spending money with you. Tell them to go to your free newsletter and download it, or to your website and track that. If they're not doing it, then what, there you go. That's the quality of the audience you're building.
Yeah.
And again, there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to realize that, are you just building to build and get a lot of numbers? Or are you building with something else in mind? And some people are just, I just want the 100,000 followers. I just want my little cousin is a perfect example. Oh my God, he's 15 now. But he was on TikTok doing these like high school subculture thing that I didn't even understand. But he got to like he was getting tens of thousands of followers from it. And I think, and he kept like in the box, oh, help me get to 100,000, help me get to this. And it was always like, that's all he cared about was just let me get to the next. And then he's like, oh, so you think I can make money from this? I'm like, no, because there's nothing, there's no value here. And like, again, trying to tell 15, 14-year-old at the time, whatever, about value, like he didn't understand it. And he's like, no, but come on, I've got 100,000. I'm going to they're going to verify me. I'm like, no, dude, they're not. Like, you're not doing something that there's zero value here. It's just because of the way the algorithms work, they reward people to comment because obviously you had to comment because of the thing, but it's not that you're like getting these people to like actually take action and do something, right? They're not like binging on your videos, bro. And he didn't obviously didn't understand it, which is fine. Then he started changing the content he was putting out. He said he tried to copy me and be F1 guy. Like he didn't say the F1 guy, but he started trying to do F1 content, like highlights and clips. And he couldn't even break like 100 views on videos.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, remember that conversation we had?
Yeah.
And he's like, no. And I explained it to him. I was like, this is why it doesn't, what you were doing doesn't work, because those people, number one, you're going completely out of left field with what you're trying to deliver to people. But you're also proving that those people they don't care about it. They just want this cheesy content on their feed. And anyway, I don't know where.
Yeah, no, I think it illustrates perfectly like that difference between, and the mentality of I'm going to go for attention, or I'm in it for a different thing, right? A longer play, building an audience who cares. And like you referred back to Savvy Sexes Social, like that was a smaller audience. It was still a large one for what Amy was doing, but because she showed up, that was there. And I think you guys have parlayed that very well in the clients that you've worked with.
And I'll add this, like if we go back to Savvy Sexy Social and the 70,000 subscribers she had, I mean, she had to work hard for that.
Yeah.
And she got on stages, paid speaking stages. She wrote she wrote one book on vlogging, and she's got other books, but the one that was on vlogging was the one that she wrote during that period of time. Had multiple mastermind groups that these all were money making things. And that was on 70,000 subscribers, because you know what? The people that were following and the people that were paying her to come speak, to come help with their YouTube strategy, to come help with their business strategy, video strategy, those are people that would have killed for 70,000 subscribers. I mean, they would have been like, I'd be happy with 10.
Right.
So it's 10,000. So it's like, yeah, as long as you understand your lane, you're good, and you stick to it, you're good. You don't have to be something that you're not.
Perfect. Mic drop right there. Mic drop.
Yep.
The two things we ask every person on Brand to Fan Show as we wrap up this interview. So tell me specifically, if I say the word fandom, what image, what thing pops right into your head? What are you a fan of?
If you ask me about fandom, the first thing I would think of is like the Tifosi, the Italian supporters of the Ferrari team, decked out in red, the red, white, and green flag, the aerial show with the red, white, and green smoke. Like that's, even the Italian supporters of the soccer team, like that to me, when you say fandom, like, and I'm using the Italian team, but European teams, whatever, any sport. Like to me, that's what fandom is. Fandom is like the crazy, rabid people that will go stop at nothing and go out of their way to, support something.
Okay. Let's wrap it up with this one. What is your favorite jersey or piece of fanwear that you've ever owned?
That I've ever owned? Okay, so my favorite, I think, that I've ever owned was a Philadelphia Flyers hat that an ex threw out on me. But it was my favorite hat. The smell of the hat, the color, it was a black hat with the Flyers logo on the front, orange brim. And it was, I don't know, there's something about that. I used to go to hockey games a lot when my dad would take us because it was the least expensive, the Hartford Whalers. we're right in town, right? We were like 30 minutes away from the arena, the rink. And it was so easy to go to. So we'd go to games all the time. And the first game we ever went to was Whalers Flyers. Whatever reason, I was like, I like the Flyers. And I started that hat. I got that at my first game. And I missed that. I missed that hat like tremendously. Missed that hat. But you know, I mean, you've got gear, so you get it. Like there's just like this aura and this smell that gets into those like old things. You're like, I'm never washing this. I don't care the sweat stain. I've worn it playing outdoor. You know, we used to play roller hockey. We'd play baseball. I'd wear that hat, whatever. I'm like, I am never cleaning it. Like that's the hat. So that I'm sad to say I don't have anymore, but there is a jersey. It's a Francesco Totti jersey. My favorite player of all time for Roma. And the thing is so worn that it's the numbers were in red. His name was in red. It's pretty much faded to the point where like, it looks like a white t-shirt or not, like a white shirt. But that's probably, I would say those two are my favorites.
I love that. I love how you talked about that. And I think that's why like on FanWagon, when you create your profile, then we will I will look for the orange bill of a vintage Flyers hat and see if we can't find that one for you.
Well, this is like the same hat James Bond wore in like one of the most recent James Bond films, but I wear the crap out of this thing. And it's like, it's got like stains on it and it's got all this stuff on it. I'm like, it just looks cool that way.
Yeah.
Right. So I've started to appreciate that more as opposed to like having everything be prim and perfect and bright and shiny. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, Vincenzo, this has been such a fun conversation. We went kind of all over the map. And I had a ton of fun with you today. Thanks for joining me on the Brand to Fan Show. This is the podcast that unpacks the phenomenon of fandom and helps brands and marketers build for the future by creating more fans. You can find the show notes for this and every episode on brandtofan.show. And I am Lauren Teague, and he is Vincenzo Landino. And this has been another great episode. Thanks for sticking around.
Thanks for having me.